my favorite line. I say this every Tuesday, and those who've been watching forever are probably sick of me saying that, but honestly, Tuesdays are my favorite day of the week because I'm always excited to share this time with just phenomenal people. Hello, Lucy Maldonado. You see my paparazzi? Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm super excited, as per always, to have people on that just can have genuine and honest and open conversations about things that we absolutely always want to spread awareness on. So before we do that, let's remember why we're here. For all who are watching, remember, if you or someone that you love is dealing with domestic violence, you can reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can also reach us on all of our social media platforms, as well as loveshouldnothurt.com. Wow, I see all of you filling up the chat already. Hello and good evening to everyone, my family, Esther, Annie, Virginia. Hello and good evening to everyone, Marilyn. Thank you for being here tonight. The last time we were here, we were just speaking about just phenomenal stories with a great woman. Lynette Caraballo was telling us about her experience of over 20 years in the emergency room at Einstein in Philadelphia and all of the domestic violence cases she would see in the ER. So that was a great conversation. We closed the night with you guys wishing me a phenomenal happy birthday. That surprise video was great. So again, thank you so much for everyone who contributed because it definitely made my night. It was awesome. So tonight, we're going to talk about a subject that is super, super close and dear and near to me because there's a lot of different things that can go with children who are dealing with domestic violence. There are people who stay for certain reasons, people that leave for certain reasons, and our children are there. Either they've seen it or there are reasons why we go. So tonight, I am joined by a phenomenal, as I always say, Fierra Latina, who is going to talk to us tonight about the subject at hand. Tonight's subject is about domestic violence. I stayed for my children. A lot of people say, what do you mean I stayed for my children? You know, if I'm going through domestic violence, I'm leaving. That is not always the case. So we're going to have this conversation tonight so that we can kind of give you reasons why people stay for their children. So I want to welcome to the screen Adriana Montalvo so that she can have this conversation with us tonight. Hello, mi amor. How are you?
Good. How are you? Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. It's so good to have you on the screen. I know we met through other people and we were able, last year during COVID to have a great conversation over the phone. We've never really had this opportunity to be on screen together and talk about domestic violence. And that was something that we did say that we wanted to do. So I'm excited that you accepted to be on tonight. Before we get into the topic at hand, tell us a little bit about who Adriana is and why it was so passionate for you to say, yes, I want to be on tonight.
Well, my name is Adriana Montalvo Andujar. I'm married to a fabulous man. He is my saint, and that is actually his name. His name is Santos. And I was a sign language interpreter for 30 years for the Board of Ed. And I'm also an author and I am a life coach. And currently I've just accepted a wonderful position with an organization called HISPA, Hispanics Inspiring Students' Performance and Achievements. And what we do is we bring in role models into the school setting to present their stories and tell their stories of overcoming obstacles, how education has gotten them from point A to point B, and where they're at now, and hopefully to inspire the students to believe that they can dream big and achieve there. I am a mother, a grandmom. I've had a hard life at the start, but God is good, and I've been blessed afterwards. And I have, a story to tell, and I share my story because I heard that a lot. If it was me, I would have left. If it was me, what do you mean you stayed for your child? And for different reasons, and everyone has different reasons why they stay, but a lot of us stay because of our kids. And I know I didn't grow up with a dad, and as a child I was molested. And so for me, in my head growing up, I always believed that if my father was there, it would not have happened. And I was going to give my child, if I ever had a child, that child was going to have a dad. And well, it didn't happen that way.
Wow. Well, thank you again so much for being here. I'm super excited because one, our comments are already lit on the side, which means there's lots of people watching. And two, the numbers continue to go up. So not only is that exciting for us because we always love when people join us and we have such a great audience, but it's super, super important to me because it shows that the topic at hand is something that's important for everyone that's watching. And I think that's because people sometimes talk so much about domestic violence in various ways, in various forums, and just talk about why he abused me and why I was, there and what I dealt with and what I went through. But we don't talk about our children as much as we should. We all have different experiences with our children and domestic violence, but we don't talk about it. We only talk about, yes, I went through this abuse. Yes, it was difficult. But we don't talk about what factor either kept us there or made us leave, and if our children played a part and how much it affected them. So I'm excited. Thank you, everyone who is watching. Thank you. And please, as per always, please stay active in the chat because anything that you have to ask, anything you want to communicate, we're going to put up on the screen so that our guests can communicate with you guys and so we can interact with you and you can be a part of the conversation. So I was looking, as I always do prior to coming on, and I was just looking at different articles and different things for why certain women stay. And one of the biggest reasons why women tell me they stay is for their children. A lot of times when people call me, they say, I want to leave. I know what I'm going through is bad, but, financially, I don't think I could do it by myself. He's providing the money. And what am I going to do? I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have a 6-year-old son. If I leave, me quedo sin nada. That's some of the stories that I hear. On the other side of it, I hear people saying, I stayed. I'm going to read a quote that I read, and it actually blew me away because that's something that I most recently heard. And I was like, well, I never, ever thought of that. I always thought of, I stayed for my children, like you said, because I want them to have a father figure. I want them to have someone in the home. This statement says, these women also put their children first, sacrificing their own safety. I was afraid if he wasn't beating me, he was going to beat my kids. And I valued their lives more than my own. And I stayed for 20 years while I protected my children, all while I was being abused. Others say I wanted my child to have a father. So that's not something that I hear a lot. I don't hear people saying I stayed because I was scared he was going to abuse my kids. So I just took the abuse for them. I stayed because I wanted them to have a father. So hearing that they stayed to protect them from the abuse was kind of like, wow for me, a wow factor, because I've never even thought about that. Tell me a little bit about your situation, because that was something that kind of brought us together, the fact that we both have a domestic violence story. What were some of the reasons why you stayed, if they included your children? What was
the main part is that I really wanted that father figure in my son's life, which ultimately he was not. So it was essentially just having a man in the house. And I really tried to force that relationship, that dad who threw the ball, the dad who wanted to take his son to the baseball game, and it never really happened. I taught my son how to box. I taught my son how to throw a football. I was the one that did that. And as a female, we can't teach our boys to be men because we are not men. We don't know what they go through hormonally. And I thought having a man in my home, that would happen. My ex-husband was a sheriff's officer who really didn't have a problem pointing his gun my way. He didn't have a problem letting me know that he was the man of the house. And I definitely did take blows for my son. I would prefer to take the blow than to let my son take it. What we don't understand is when we stay, the children go through PTSD, and there's childhood PTSD, and that PTSD is real. My son is a Marine. He was in the Marine Corps for many years, and he came out with PTSD. And it was part of it was attributed to his childhood and what he witnessed and what he saw his dad do to me. And how he taught his son that this is the way a man is supposed to be. He's supposed to be in control. I also stayed because financially, he ran the books in the house.
Yeah.
He knew where every penny was. I leave with nothing, no money, nothing. How far can I get? How far can I go? I grew up in a neighborhood called Bushwick. It was a welfare projects in Brooklyn. There was shootouts there. There was drug there. It was rampant. That area was called the killing fields of New York City because of the amount of people that died there. were more than the people in New York, period. So shootouts were common. It wasn't like if you got caught in a shootout, it was like you got caught in a shootout, you dove, you got up once it was done, and you went to play handball, or you went to the gym, or you went to play basketball. You didn't even go home and tell your parents because it was normal. And so I didn't want to go back there. My mother's door was always open. So it wasn't like I didn't have a place to go, but I didn't want my child there because to me, that was more dangerous. The fact that he could get shot just because he was walking or playing in the streets. The drugs, the needles, he could come across that and play with it. So in my head, like you justify everything. And so the money aspect, the fact that he was a sheriff's officer, so he kind of knew my moves. He knew where I was going to be at. All that played a big factor. I did leave him when we lived in New York. I came here and I started my life here. And after a year, my son wanted his dad. And he was only 4 years old. And to me, he was telling me that he got therapy and that he was, he got help and he was better. And it was good when he came back. But as we know, all of us who have walked through domestic violence and are still in it, we know you have that cycle. You have the courting stage, and then the honeymoon stage, and then the walking on eggshells stage, and then tension, and then the eruption. And so after a couple of months, it started all over again. And it's so true that, when you leave the situation is bad. And if you bring the situation back, it kind of comes back with tenfold of the damage. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned PTSD because obviously, we've heard it so much, PTSD with people who are in the military or people who suffer like really like tragic events. When we think of PTSD with our kids, especially with dealing with domestic violence, it's not something that a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people are like, oh, if I take them out young enough, they're not affected. It's not, but they don't realize that there's a real effect that happens with our kids. My situation, my standpoint was the entire time I was pregnant is when I was going through the motions of this isn't the life I want for her. When she's born, I don't want her to see this. I don't want her to see her mother being, abused. I mean, I was pregnant and I was pushed down the steps. I was kicked in my stomach. I was punched in the face. All of this was happening while she was in me. So I was afraid, okay, if this is what's happening to me while I'm pregnant, I can't imagine what's going to happen when she's here. And she's able to understand. And, as I got older, I kind of battled with what you said. I battled with, okay, I don't want her to get hurt, but then I want her to have a dad. I don't want my daughter to be the one that doesn't have a father. We have a circle of friends and everybody has their dad. I don't want my child to be the one that doesn't have it. So I battled with it. And, for a little bit of that time between the age of her being born till 4 years old, she was a witness to some abuse. And, I thought she's little. She's not going to be affected by it. But, for people who know my story and people who've seen our film and people who've read the book, they know that, she's the reason why I finally ended it. Like totally, like no turning back, nothing. Because at 4 years old, you're thinking they don't understand. They don't get it. But at 4 years old, after I woke up from being knocked out cold by him, she was the one at 4 telling the police officer who was there when I woke up, my daddy hit mommy and she fell and mommy never got up. And that was my defining moment. That's when I was like, she is fully aware of what's going on. She absolutely knows what's going on. I can't do this anymore. This isn't the memory that I want for her. And, we think about it now and we go back on it now and, she doesn't want to talk about it, but there was a pivotal moment in her growing up from what she was to who she became. And she is now a phenomenal young lady. There's nothing negative I can say about her. She's such a good kid. I feel like God, absolutely, I say she's my saving grace. She is an amazing child. But there was a moment from about, I'd say 8 to 10, where she was going through a transformation, and kids always do. But she was going to school. She was her normal jolly self. She was being silly. And I had went to a concert on a Sunday with my best friends, and the artist still hadn't come out. It was 9:00 at night and we were still waiting. The opening act was still going. And I'm like, oh my God, my daughter has school tomorrow. She's young. So I was trying to get in contact with her father, kept calling and calling and calling. Nobody would answer. Finally got through, but it was her stepmother that answered. And I'm like, listen, I've been trying to call him, no answer. She's like, oh, he's in the shower. And I'm like, okay, well, can you please put her to bed? Or I'll pick her up with her uniform because it's late and she has school tomorrow and I want her to sleep. Sure, no problem. Never got a hold of him. When my daughter got in the car the next morning, she's young and she's telling me, oh, mom, the police were here last night. And I'm like, what do you mean the police were here last night? And then she told me the entire story of how things were going on in that home, that I didn't think she was seeing at this age. I thought, okay, she's older now. She's not dealing with it again, allowing her to be a part of it because I want her to have a father. And I didn't think about it. I was so angry. I didn't think about what effect it could have had on her. I just told her, okay, it's okay, mama. I'm going to take you to school. No big deal. I received a phone call from her school counselor 2 days later. And the school counselor said, did something happen? Did something at home happen? And in my mind, I'm not thinking about where she was. I'm like, no, we've been good. She's fine. And she's like, no, something happened over this weekend. There must have been a change in her, maybe something you don't know about. And I said, why? And she said, she is not the same child she was last week. She is totally different. Her entire demeanor's changed. She's angry the past 2 days. She's talking back. And I'm like, I know my girl can have a mouth at home, but she knows how to behave. So what is going on? And at the time, I did not realize it. And then as days went on, I'm like, oh my God, I know why
It's a trigger. It's an absolute trigger. My son, into his young adult stage, couldn't sleep with the light off. It's a trigger because when the lights went down, bad things happen.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize was that I thought, behind closed doors, he was behind the door in his room. I thought I was quiet enough when I was going through it. And it was it was during the dark in his room. And that was his trigger. His trigger was when the lights are off, bad things happen.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a strapping Marine. My son is not a small person. He is 6'2", 260 pounds, 10% body fat, and was afraid to go to sleep with the light off.
Yeah.
That says a lot for the fact that children know what's going on. They hear what's going on. And we have to address it. We have to know that making that choice. And I totally, if a woman stays in an abusive relationship for the children, she's loving those kids more than she could possibly love herself.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, no one sacrifices themselves for another person unless you're a mom or a dad, because honestly, there are men out there going through this.
Absolutely.
And they're staying in relationships, being abused by their females, by their wives, for their children's sake. And so it does happen both ways. People don't want to address that. Before we came on the air, we spoke about, man up. You gotta man up, handle the situation. Or what are people gonna say when they find out that I'm letting my female hit me and bite me and hit me? So it goes both ways. And we do it because we love our children and we think we're doing what's best for them. And in fact, we are destroying them as well, because we're making a choice that, my son said it to me. He said, I wish you would have left earlier. And then the kids go through that guilt trip that they feel like it's my fault.
Yeah.
It's my fault that she stayed. It's my fault. And it's a difficult place for them to be, because we do love them and we think we're doing the best. And in fact, that guilt that they have to live through, that they put themselves through, not that we are holding anything against them.
Yeah.
But it's a hard choice, and we stay for many different reasons. The finances, the fact that some women don't have a place to go, the fact that some women are so under the microscope that they can't even make a phone call without the man knowing. So there's all these things. I mean, I've dealt with, and you assisted me a couple of weeks ago with a family member
Mhm,
who was pulled out of an apartment and beaten. I
mhm,
mean, that the ex broke down the door, pulled her out, and beat her up.
mhm,
And really no charges have been, I mean, she tried to file charges, but
mhm.
they said it was domestic, and let's just leave it alone.
Yeah.
And yet there's a baby involved right now.
Mhm.
So her decisions are going to be her decisions. And I hope that I could be that example, that
Yeah.
you don't have to have him there. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah. And that's the scary part, because a lot of times, especially like when they're younger, and not that it matters whether I'm older, younger, but sometimes when younger women are going through this and they have kids, or it's their first kid, and then the abuse begins, they're just like, what do I do? Like, I have a brand new baby. I have to stay with him. I have to. And then they don't realize, that strength that they're looking for, they definitely have it. We all have it. We
Oh
just
yeah.
have to see it within ourselves. I think about myself and how, when I went through my situation and I finally left and I lived in my car for 2 weeks, I can imagine me having left once I had her and living in my car for 2 weeks. Like, how the hell would I have lived with my baby in the car? So I get it. And no shape or form, if anyone is watching and they feel like, oh my God, they're saying I stayed. No, we are not putting you down. What we're saying is
No,
the
no, we
strength that you
understand.
need. Yes, and the strength that you need, you possess that. You have it in you and you can. The biggest message and the reason for this show is to remind women and men, whichever ones are dealing with it, that oftentimes staying for our children is something, like you said, we do out of love. But oftentimes when we do it, it ends up hurting them more than it ends up helping them,
Right.
because we think, oh, they're not, they're young, they're not going to remember this. And then you end up in family therapy 20 years later, and the kids are like, Mom, I wish you would have left.
Right.
When you thought that you were whispering and you guys were arguing, I heard all of it. My daughter is 14 years old now. When I went through the abuse with her father that she saw, because most of it happened prior to her arrival, but throughout the years between her birth and 4 years old, there were things that she did see, and things even with him and his other relationships that she did see, and I wish she hadn't seen, because there's things that she remembers now, things that she
Mhm.
reminds me of, and it breaks my heart, because I'm like, I really wanted her to have what everyone else had. Even though we weren't together, I still wanted her to have a father. I still wanted her to have that figure in her life. And I'm like, did I do more damage doing that to her? And now she's older and it doesn't change. The different choices that I make as an adult now, I'm 41 years old. I'm not married, so she's still going to see relationships if I continue to date, or even if I stay by myself. But the decisions that I make now must be ones that are healthy for her, because she's even more aware. I've been in
Right.
relationships now that she's older, where I've dated men, and same thing. We've had minor arguments at night because I'm like, she's sleeping, she won't hear us. And she'll wake up and say, the walls are thin, I heard everything, and then she's upset, like, Mom,
Mhm.
you deserve better, or Mom, I want you to be happy. So even as an adult, our children and the role that we play for them and what we let them see, even at this age, is super important. I'm not
But
being used.
we never stop being moms, right? We never stop being moms. And so what we do, we did the best we could with what we had at that time, right? And our situations now are different. And if it kind of goes back to that old adage, if I knew then what I knew, what
Yeah,
I know now, if I
yeah,
knew then what I know now, if
yeah,
I knew the fact that, you know, domestic violence hotline was a real place that was going to help me.
yeah,
I know that now. I
yeah,
know that they do exist and they're out there, and there's a lot of resources that can assist you.
yeah.
But back then, I was scared to call them because
Mhm,
what was going to happen? How are they going to show up in my house? My
mhm.
husband being a sheriff's officer, would he know? How would he find out? And then how's it going to get worse?
Yeah,
So we walk on those eggshells,
yeah,
and then everything is for our kids. Everything
yeah,
is that that protection, that coat. We want to wrap them in our arms and say everything is going to be okay.
mhm.
We're going to make it through this. But it's hard to really, looking back now, I can say, it's going to be okay. but back then, and when you're in it, you don't see it.
You
You
don't.
can't
Absolutely.
see past the immediate. You can't see past, let me just get past today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow will be another day, but today is when I get the chance to breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, today's the day that if I behave right, he's not
Yeah.
going to hit me.
Yeah.
Today's the day that I'm going to make sure that I don't wear something that's going to make him angry. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I got dressed in the morning and I would come out the room. I'm a very conservative person. And as an interpreter, we had to wear black all
Yeah.
the way. So it wasn't like I could wear anything revealing. And I think just to spite me, he would say, nope, go change. And I would go to the room and change and then come back out. Nope, I don't like that. Go change. And it was weird because once I got him out of the house, and he was gone, because just because you get them out of the house does not mean that you're
Oh,
safe.
not at all. Mm-mm.
Tires were cut, basement was flooded, house was broken into.
Yeah.
In 2018, I found out that he had tried to contract somebody. So all this, plays a huge role in your psyche. But once he was out, I would go to my son and say, how does this look? And he's like, Ma, you look great. And
Mhm.
then I would go back to the room because I was in a habit
Yeah.
of, I got to change. I got to change like 7 times before I know what to wear. And it took a long time to break those habits of protecting myself from the next blow, even though he wasn't here.
Yeah.
So imagine what the children go through.
Yeah.
And I'm an adult. I'm a professional adult asking a little 10-year-old, can I wear this? Because I
Yeah.
need permission from somebody
Yeah.
because of the habit of being abused.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was engaged to someone a few years ago, and my daughter around that time was about 5, 6, 7. Um, and I thought that he, hit the jackpot. I have somebody amazing now, somebody great. I'm going to spend my life with this person. And it ended up being, because abuse doesn't show up quickly.
Oh, it's all about
There's
grooming
no,
and
right.
gaslighting.
Absolutely. So the beginning of the relationship was color de rosa. Everything was great. We moved in together. We lived together. We started paying the bills together and doing this together. And I'll take care of you. And you want me to cook? I'll cook for you. I do everything. I wash the clothes. He was amazing till he wasn't. Till, even though she's little, it started with being jealous of her. If she was sick, I couldn't sleep in the room with her because he was angry. She's okay. You put her to sleep. You need to come back and sleep with me. And I'm like, my daughter's 5 years old and she's sick. I'm gonna sleep with her. No, 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 no. She's fine. You're spoiling her. And I'm like, okay. And these are things that as the relationship went on, I started to see. And then they, escalated, because now 3 years we're into this, we're living together. And now, now he's got me outside up against the garage and he's choking me. And my daughter's upstairs and can hear me screaming, type of thing. So, these are all instances that people just, they think, well, because it happened outside and you weren't in the house, she should be okay. She could hear me from upstairs still. She can still hear me screaming. When you come in and we're thinking, because we always say we want to keep our pain from our kids, right? Even if it's not domestic violence, even if you're just in a relationship and you're having a bad day and you guys are arguing and you go to your room and you cry, we always think we're keeping stuff from our kids, but they always know. Your kids
Look,
know when you're hurt. They feel it. They know when you're hurt.
I worked in the school system for 30 years. I worked with deaf children for 30 years. These kids knew how to read me, and they weren't my children. Like I could be, actually one time I got sick, so sick that I had to be taken to the hospital. That day, my student, her name is Talia, she looked at me and she says, what's wrong with you? And I was sick. And I said, no, I'm fine. Everything is good. And she's like, no, something's wrong with you. And I said, no, I'm fine. And she said, something's wrong with you. And by that afternoon, I was being taken to the hospital. So a child outside of my blood, out of my home, can read me. How much quicker, even if your kid didn't hear you screaming, even if your child didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, there's a sense, that heartstring, that connection, that thing that that baby was tied to you at one time, right? By the umbilical cord. Those senses don't go away that easy.
Yeah.
I can tell you that my son has been away, like, he could be across the country. And there have been times where he's called me. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
fine." Meanwhile, I just finished crying because whatever. So they have that sense.
Mhm.
We think, we believe that they didn't hear anything, but they see you in the morning and
Mhm.
you cried your eyes out. They know.
Yep.
You might not tell them. Oh, I'm good. I have allergies.
Yeah.
Oh, they know. And
Yeah.
and for anybody hearing that, they know. They know. Would I have changed to be not tell him everything that had happened, but been a little honest and just said, "I had a rough night with your dad last night," or just because in the lying, then I would beat myself up for that.
Mhm.
Because he was right. He knew what something had happened.
Yeah.
And I'm telling him, "No, no, no. I don't know. It must have been a dream." And
Yeah.
it
We think
wasn't.
we shield them, but we're really not. So we
Mm-mm.
are 31 minutes in. Time flies when you're having fun. So I'll do as I always do. Reminder for those who are watching why we are here. Once again, if there's anyone that you know, you love, you're close to, family, friend, coworker, or yourself who is dealing with domestic violence and you're fearful to reach out and get help, you're scared to contact me because you don't know me, or you're just worried or just scared to take that first step, reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. There's so many amazing people on the other end who are willing to help you at 1-800-799-7233. If you do feel comfortable reaching out to us, you can reach us at any of our social media platforms, as well as our website at loveshouldnothurt.com. So another interesting thing that I saw from looking things up is that some women don't leave their situations because, as in every bad relationship, when it's dealing with domestic violence and you decide to leave, you're going to look like the bad guy. If you make that choice, I'm leaving, I don't want to be with you because I want to take my life back, you're going to be made the bad guy. So in a lot of instances, women are scared to leave because these men take them to court and they're worried they're going to lose custody of their kids. Now, how fearful is it to leave an abuser and be afraid that the same man who almost killed you is now going to keep your children, and then you're the one who has to leave? So that's another big factor and another fear for some women, that if they walk away from this abuser, I'm going to lose custody of my kids. So I'm going to stay, because if I don't and I leave, I may not see my kids again. So that's
Mhm.
another huge fear. Looking every time I do these shows prior, I always try to look. And when I look and I see certain things, I'm just like, I never thought of that. Because that's the last thing that I would think of, because I'm thinking, I'm mom. They're not going to take her from me. But we don't realize, which is something that I learned very early on when I received my protection order. When I went down there, they asked me, do you have custody of her? And I said, what do you mean? I gave birth to her. She's mine. And they're like, no, technically she's not. Did you physically get custody of her? And I'm like, what do you mean? This child came out of my body. She belongs to me. And they were like, no, you're not. I'm like, so you're telling me that if I leave her father and I let her stay with him for a visit or whatever, he doesn't have to return her to me? And they're like, no, unless there's a custody order in there, he can keep her and there's nothing you can do about it. So this is something that's major for women too, because they're sitting at home and they want to take that jump. They want to be free, but then they're scared the courts might take those kids from me.
Yep. And then think of just the migrants that are here, the people that have come from other countries that are undocumented
Yeah.
and going through this. Who do they go to?
Yeah.
Where do they
Absolutely.
go to? How do
Absolutely.
they escape that? And they put up with that. You're right. Your child is not your child. Your child belongs to the two of you. And it's hard because the abused has to prove that they've been abused.
Yeah.
And while there is physical abuse that definitely you could take a picture of, what happens when it's emotional? What happens
Mhm.
when it's verbal? Um, my abuse was a mixed bag of all of it.
Oh yeah.
But what do you do when your husband's going to sleep with a gun under his pillow and
Yeah.
you're supposed to lay down in bed and he reminds you that, hey, this can go off at any given moment, and oops, I didn't realize I was having a bad dream. He didn't put the gun on me.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to fall asleep with the image of my head being blown away. That's emotional. How do
Yeah.
I prove that?
Right.
How do you prove that? And how do you go to somebody and say, well, this is what he said? Oh no, you misunderstood. He's a good guy. He's a sheriff. He's a good guy. And you don't expect us to believe that he actually did that.
Yes.
So that's another thing that you have to go up against, that you not only are you being abused, but now you have to prove that you're being abused. And then depending on the type of abuse, there's physical, yes, and the physical is real. But how about he takes all your money and you don't have a penny, to use, and you have to ask, and you work and you make your money, but you have to give it to him and then he can control. So
Well,
then that's abuse.
yeah.
There's so many different variants of abuse, and we think physical, and physical absolutely, but verbal, emotional, the pushes, the put downs, men calling their women fat and embarrassing them in front of
Oh, yeah.
people. And you better know your role, because if you don't, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to let people in on some things that I know about you.
Yeah.
And then,
Manipulation.
and then that's like I was saying, the gaslighting, the grooming. They groom you into believing. I was with my ex for almost 3 years. Perfect gentleman.
Hmm.
Perfect. 10 years older than me. I was 17 when I met him. I thought I was in love, and groomed me perfectly. And then it wasn't until 3 months after we got married was the first blow. And what do I do? And mind you, my mother didn't want me to marry him. So in my head, I couldn't go back to her
Hmm.
because, I made my bed and now I have to lay in it.
Yeah.
And what do I do? I didn't have a child at the time. That would have been the prime moment to leave. But because I told my mom that I knew what I was doing and I
Yeah.
wanted to prove her wrong.
Yeah.
But the beautiful part was when I left him 10 years later, and I told my mom I was getting a divorce, which I was born and raised Catholic. And so that's a big no-no. That's another reason why people stay. You made a vow, you have to stick to your vow.
Yeah.
And so when I told her, my mother was like, thank God, thank God I needed you away from him. No one knew that I was being abused. I didn't tell my family members. I didn't talk, because then there's that shame element also,
Oh,
being
yeah.
embarrassed. I'm a boxer from Brooklyn. I'm a fighter, and I'm letting this guy blow for blow get me. How do
Yeah.
I tell people that that's happening?
Yeah.
So then we're embarrassed, and then we feel guilty, and we beat ourselves up, and then we
Mhm.
doubt ourselves, and then we settle and believe that we deserve this.
Yeah.
So whoever is listening out there, please, please, please get the help that you need. There's so much more to life. There's so many blessings out there, and your children, especially your children, they need the best version of you
Yes.
alive.
Yeah.
And so you being away from that abuser will give them the opportunity to see the best version that you can possibly be. Because if you'd have told me 20 years ago that I would be married to a saint, and he really is, a salsero on top of that, which is a
I see
bonus.
your videos.
It's a bonus. That's a bonus. But if you would have told me that I would be the director of educational programs for HISPA, and I'm an author, and I just got done doing a half a marathon for the Rocky Run, and if you'd have told me that I would have been anything, I would look at you like you were crazy,
Yeah.
because at that point I saw myself as worthless,
Yeah.
unworthy, unqualified, and no good, because that's what he told me.
Yeah.
And once I got out of it and I got away from the shadow, because there is a shadow that is casted over you as
Yeah.
as a woman who's survived domestic violence. Once you get away from that shadow, wow, man, that light hits you, and it's a beautiful journey of self-discovery, and you
Yeah.
realize you have these talents that you forgot about. I mean, my ex didn't allow me to dance, and I love to dance.
Me too.
Um, he didn't allow me to paint. I'm an artist. I do murals. He didn't allow me to paint because, like you said, he would get jealous of that. It took too much
Mhm,
time away from him.
mhm.
So the only things I had were what he allowed me to participate in, and as long as it was with his friends and his people, when I came out of that, oh, there's so much more out there. There's so much waiting, and this world is waiting for you to show up in your best
Absolutely.
self, because you're going to bring something to this world that no one else can, because you're the only you there is.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's something that I wish, every woman or man that's listening to this that has been abused, I wish they could jump 10 years from now and
Yes,
see
absolutely.
how beautiful life can really be when you're not in that shadow anymore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that everything that you said could be as well maneuvered for our kids, because who I was when I was 21 and who I am now at 41 is totally different. And my daughter may not have seen fully the abuse, the physical abuse that I went through with that situation. But as I've gotten older, as I've stated, I have been in other relationships as she's gotten older that have hindered her feelings towards them. And she's like, immediately, my daughter is very overprotective of me. And she is so because she knows what I've been through. So anytime I meet someone new or I start to date someone new, she's very apprehensive. She's very like, if I say, oh no, they're a great person, she's like, I don't know if he's a great person or not, and because she knows what I've been through, because she has grown with me, it's just her and I. So she's grown with me and she's been a part of these relationships with me, and she has seen what I've been through. And, again, I've dated people and I've been in relationships with people that may not have done the same thing and have given me physical abuse, but they have the mental and the emotional. I've dated men in front of her who tell me that I need to lose weight, who tell me that, I should be a little bit thinner because my clothes don't look great on me, or you could be doing this better, and those are things that when we sit in the car and we've driven, she's like, you should see this for yourself, but that's abuse too, mom.
Mhm,
What they're saying to you is abuse too, mom. He shouldn't worry about what size you are. If he loves you, he should love you for who you are,
mhm,
and she's grown with me through that. And, now, we sit and we talk every time we're together, and she's just like, I'm not angry when you date people, and I'm not mean for a purpose, but I know how phenomenal you are. And I didn't see you when you weren't feeling like you were phenomenal. But now that you're older and I see who you are, mom, like, you're amazing. You deserve someone who looks at you and no matter what you look like says, Christina, you're amazing the way that you are. You're beautiful. And this is a 14-year-old who has
mhm,
these conversations with me. So if people think that their kids do not understand, they do. They see it, they feel it, and they go through it with you. Because at
mhm,
my worst moments, as I've gotten older and people have walked on me and made me feel terrible, she feels it too. Even though, like we said, we think they're not seeing it, she feels it too. We've gotten in the car, we've had drives to school, and she's sad. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? I'm fine. Alina, what's wrong with you? I'm fine. And then later on in the day, she finally wants to speak and she'll say, I'm hurt. Well, why are you hurt, mama? Because I know that you're hurt. And I know that somebody hurt you and somebody has made you feel unloved. And it makes me feel pain. And that constantly breaks my heart when I've heard things like that from her, because I'm thinking to myself, if I am not in a marriage where she's seeing negativity and, she's going through the abuse with me, but she has seen me just dating and seeing people abuse me by their words and how they mistreat me, I can't imagine if I still would have been married and in that relationship and she
mhm,
wants me physically be beaten and thrown through a wall. You know, the biggest thing that people should take from this is, I get it. Everyone wants that idea of a picket fence and an amazing husband and two kids and a beautiful life. And when we don't give that to our kids, we feel like somehow, we haven't done what we're supposed to. Like we didn't
we
give that
let
life.
them down.
Yeah, we've let ourselves down. But listen, being single and showing your child your best self and taking care of them on your own, I feel like has been the best example for her. And people counted me out. People thought, you're not going to
Oh,
do it alone. Being a single mom's not easy, Chrissy. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to do it. and I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. And I think every day when I watch my daughter that leaving those abusive relationships and focusing only on her was the best decision I made. And even though I didn't have the white picket fence or that husband in that family, I still have given her the best of me.
At
And
the end
I
of the day,
want you to know.
at the end of the day, those are all material things that will not be remembered, but what will be remembered is bringing your best self, the best version of who you are meant to be, whatever that is. Single, with somebody, without somebody, your best version is the best gift you could give your child. And if that means that you move away from this abuse because you're not giving them your best version, then that's what needs to happen, so that they see that they can be their best selves also, that they don't have to settle, that they don't have to deal with abuse. That as soon as they see it, they're like, I know the signs, I'm out of here. Your daughter sounds like she's that person.
Well, I'm not worried about her.
And that's the thing. It's like no one gets to decide how big your dreams get to be. Nobody gets to decide what your best version is. And no one gets to decide to put a cup over you to hide you and say, no, you can't do that. I'm not going to give you permission to do that. No one gets to do that. And it's important that when these men and women are controlling that person, that abuse is control. That's what they want to do, is they want to control you because they know that you have something to give to this world that they don't have.
Yeah.
And so jealousy plays a huge role in domestic violence because people see your light and they don't see their light. And I want to be the one that's got to be noticed, not you, which is the reason why my ex didn't allow me to dance, which is the reason why he didn't want me to paint, because it gave me attention that he wasn't getting. Yeah. And that would tick him off to the point where he couldn't be me. He couldn't be what I was bringing to the forefront. And a lot of times abusers control you that way. They don't want the world to see your best version. Yeah. So they hide you and they beat you into submission so the world doesn't see you and the greatness that you can bring not only to yourself and the world around you, but to your children, and serve as that example to inspire your children that despite what this person tried to do to you, I'm still shining. I'm still here. And I'm gonna give my kids my very best, whatever that is. There were times that I had no oil in my tank, and my son and I cuddled in bed with coats on, and in the middle of winter, and then we had cereal, and it was good. We talk about that time that we were together. Here I was going through guilt trips, thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have heat. The food pantry is closed. I can't get there. We're going to have to eat mayonnaise sandwiches. Yeah. And yet those were the best times. When my son graduated boot camp, I had this horrible van. It was a horrible van. And it had, okay. Don't laugh. So slow it down. You know, the panels, the wooden panels, yeah. It was a caravan, a light blue caravan. If you ever saw War of the Worlds, it was the only car that started because that car was hardy. But it was a light blue caravan. And when my son and I used to escape, we had sandwiches in the car and we had our bags packed already because we had to get away, right? And when he graduated boot camp, he was the honor graduate for the Marine Corps from his whole platoon, 900 guys. He was number one, the honor graduate. When I went to his graduation, I said, what do you want me to bring? What do you want to eat? Because, I'm going to celebrate him big. I was sitting in the VIP section because of him. And he said, I want you to rent a van and I want you to bring sandwiches and a malta in a cooler. Because those were the best times of my life.
Absolutely.
That was when I gave him my best self, when I escaped, when we played adventure games and we were in the woods and we were camping. That's what he remembered. He remembered that woman that was strong enough to run, and that woman who had the sense to pack a sandwich and a malta and a bag to make sure that we have food and clothes in the car. That's the woman that needed to show up. And that's the woman that I am now. I'm always, planning. I'm always, because I know there's a good life and we can escape and get there.
Absolutely.
Have to make that point.
Yes. And we don't see that because oftentimes we think staying and having that warm home or having, all these clothes in the closet and, that obviously that's obvious, right? That's what you need. You need to function. You need to have heat. You need to have clothing on your back. We think that these are the things that are going to hinder us if we leave, but we don't realize just those small things of, listen, I don't care if we have heat, Mom, and I don't care if we have arroz con gandule and we're sitting in the back of a truck with a sandwich. As long as it's you and me, we're good. And I've always told my daughter that, I've been with people, I've broken up, and I tell her all the time, at the end of the day, Mama, people may go, people may stay, people may not love me forever, but the love between you and me, that's for life. I'm going to always have you no matter what. And that's something that she says. And even, with my most recent, she has told me, like, Mom, me and you, that's it. I just want you and me. And as long as you are happy, that's all that matters to me. I want to see you smile because you deserve it. And I look at her and I'm like, man, the sacrifices we make for our kids, we don't understand that just lo mínimo, just that truck and that sandwich, that's enough for him. And that's enough.
The ugliest caravan you ever saw. I swear, I'm going to send you a picture.
But you had it for him. When you left, you had it for him. And even though it would have been scary to leave with Alina in the car, at least I would have been protecting her from all of those things. Before we cut off, a question was posted up by our producer. It says, and it's for both of us, what has been your biggest blessing before your children and after your children? That's for both of us. I'll let you think about it.
Biggest blessing for me was that I was a boxer and I learned early on that you fight for what you want. And also my faith. I had my faith always there, and I knew that I was being watched over even during the beatings. Before my child, wow, was there even life before my child? That's a hard question because I always say, man, I can't remember my life without him. After my child, everything revolved around him. And, I try to be the best that I could. I try to bring the best that I could. I love humor. He's funny as heck. And we love to laugh together. We love to dance together. So my biggest blessings is to be that mother that he had always deserved. With or without our dad, we made it through, and standing on my faith and standing on the fact that I won. And as a winner, as that champion, there's a quote by Brene Brown about daring greatly. I dared greatly, and I'm still daring greatly, and I still am out to do things that I probably said I would never do, like this 13-mile run that I did. But my biggest blessing is that I dared greatly, and I'm living proof that if you just believe that it can happen, it can happen. There's work, and it's simple. It's a decision that you have to make, but simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means that you have to put in the work. There's going to be falls. Your face is going to slam to the floor. But the blessing is that you got the strength to get right back up and say, yep, I'm going to keep going. And I think that's the biggest blessing after my son, is that I knew I had to keep going because of him.
Ooh, so I think that is a hard question because I always say that when she says, Mom, what'd you do before me? And I'm like, I don't remember, girl.
Remember that
party. I mean, I don't really remember, but I think my biggest blessing before, because, we say that our kids, that's it. They're the center of our world once we have them. I think my biggest blessing before was my mother and my grandmother. They, my grandmother's no longer here, which is totally difficult to live life without her. It's brand new. She just passed away last March. But my mother and my grandmother were my biggest blessing because They constantly, I feel like, honestly, people think it's so cliche, and so many people have different thoughts about religion, but I honestly believe that the prayers that they prayed over me constantly when I had no idea are what protected me. And
That's
I
the
say
hedge
that
of
all the time.
protection.
Yes, I say that all the time, that my grandmother and my mother were on their knees praying for me, even when I didn't know that they were praying for me. And I think that's why I survived and I wasn't killed during that time, because,
Mhm.
I constantly had people protecting me. And my blessing after my child is my child. Because, like I say, Alina is my saving grace. And I will always say that. And it sounds like so repetitive on every show for the past 3 years, but my daughter was my blessing. Had my daughter, and I tell people all the time, they see it in the video, they see it in the book, and they hear it when I talk about it. I say how the last time I left, because I woke up to her telling the police officer, what had happened, and I realized she understood. So I said, this is it. So I say she saved me, because hearing her little voice talking to the police officer is what woke me up. But that wasn't the only time she saved me, because when she was first born, I had an incident, and I say it in the book and in the video. I had an incident where he was watching her, and I had went to a wedding, and the entire time he was sending me messages because he didn't like the dress that I had on, and it was just like, I see what you're doing. Someone's watching you, and I was so angry. And as I drove home that day, I said, I'm going to kill him today. I'm going to kill him. I don't care. And I didn't think about the fact that I had a kid, because I just had a kid. She was only like a month old. But in my mind, I'm going to kill him when I get there. He's not going to do this to me anymore. And I literally went in and I charged at him. And I had on heels that were like huge stilettos, like 6, 7 inches. And I stabbed him. And there was blood everywhere. And I was on top of him, just stabbing him, stabbing him, stabbing him. I believe that had my daughter not cried in her playpen, I would have killed him. I went
Mm.
to jail that night. My neighbor was banging on the door and telling me, Chrissy, what are you doing? Trying to break into the door. And that didn't stop me. Nothing stopped me. He was screaming. Her father was screaming. It was blood everywhere. Nothing stopped me but the sound of hearing my daughter cry. The
Mm.
moment I heard that newborn crying, I stopped. I dropped the shoe. I jumped off of him. And I'm telling you, she has been my blessing. The day that little girl was born, my life was blessed, because she has changed me. And I have fought to be a better person from who I was then to who I am now for her. Everything
Mhm.
that I do, every just road I go down is always for Alina. Everything I do, I think of her. I have been in relationships since she was born that have not been the best. And it'll take me some time to fix it. And then in the end, I'm like, I can't do this. My daughter's watching. You have to get to a point where your kids are, while you're doing things, even if they're difficult, even if you don't think you can finance yourself, even if you think you're going to sleep in that car, do it, because your kids are worth it.
And reach out, because there are people out there so willing to help you get out, help you set up the getaway, help you escape, help you even with just the thought process, just
Yeah.
thinking it out. There are people out there that will help you, but you have to reach out, because we don't know. We don't know what you're going through. We've been through it,
Mhm.
but we don't know exactly what you're going through. And you have to find that strength to make that call. You have to find that strength to reach out to someone that you can trust.
Mhm.
I had a friend that she was going through it, and she gave me a bag of clothes to hold on to. So when the date came that she was going to leave,
Mhm.
she didn't have to walk out with anything. She
Yeah.
already had a bag of clothes, and I was holding on to it for her. So these are things that, a lot of times you can't just up and go.
Yeah.
I wish it would be like that. There are times you have to plan, and you have to plan, and then the plan will come through and you'll be able to get out. So
Absolutely. Well, we have come to the end. I think we've had a phenomenal conversation. We have 1 minute left, but just till 8 o'clock. It doesn't mean we're done, because it's my show. I go as long as I want. But this is the time that I always tell folks is your time to shine. I'm going to go to the back. I'll be in the green room. This is your moment to please tell us about your book. Tell us where they can purchase that book. Tell us everything about you, and kind of give us your final thought on what we discussed tonight.
well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story and be on your show. You do some amazing things with for women and men as far as domestic violence goes. So I want to applaud you for that. I am the author of Shoes for Yana, shoes, because, you know, women love shoes. We might not be able to afford those shoes, but we at least are going to try them on. Shoes for Yana. Yana means you are not alone. It is an acronym for you are not alone. And it's about stepping into the shoes of 16 women who did not let fear choose their destiny. Each woman is represented by a shoe, and each shoe takes you on a journey of their life and what they've been through. Some have been abused, others, you know, have just suffered that first love, broken heart that we all can relate to. That you are not alone. And, you know, you may see the beautiful shoes up in the front, but there's always those combat boots that lead to that fight that we all have. We all have a struggle, some form of struggle. And so it's everything in between, from your first love and your broken heart to actually my story. I tell my story through The Wizard of Oz, and how my ruby slippers brought me to where I'm at now. I am working on the male version now. It's going to be called Shoes for Yanni, and Yanni means you are not isolated, because men isolate themselves in their trauma, and men are taught just to you know, handle it like a man, take care of it, and that's it, and don't cry. And, you know, these are things that we have to become aware of, that men are being abused now as well. My name, you know, I am a life coach. My company is called Purpose Steps. I work for an organization called HISPA. You can reach me at Adriana at purposesteps.com. Purposed with an ED ending, because your purpose is out there. It's waiting for you. It has already been designated for you. Steps, because you have to take the steps to get there. And I am available to you, Facebook, Instagram. You can reach me at Adriana at purposesteps.com. And I am one that would love to connect with people who have questions as far as, you know, their life's journey. I am a life coach. I am a personal and executive life coach as well. And so if you want to reach out to me asking any questions, please feel free to do so. And that's essentially it. That's who I am.
Thank you so much, mi amor. I had a great time with you. I'm going to give my final thoughts. So we're going to put you in the back, pero no te vaya, because we're going to come back and say goodbye together.
Sounds good.
Thank you, as always, to everyone who is watching and who has joined us tonight. I love that the numbers were going up and going up. It showed that this topic was something that was super valuable and important to those watching. I hope that we take away from tonight that no matter what happens in your life, no matter how many strife and bad things you go through, our children are listening. Our children are watching. And I know sometimes we feel like the best thing that we can do for our children is to stay in certain circumstances, because we think it's better to have that male role model or that mother role model, because like we said, women and men both go through it. But remember that our children are listening. They are watching, and everything that they learn, they take with them. Remember that you want to break the cycle. You do not want your children to believe that this is life, that abuse is life, and that it's something that they should deal with, adhere to, or accept. So please, please, please know that we are in no way, shape, or form shaming anyone who has stayed. What we are doing is trying to show you that that little bit of power that you need to get up and go is inside you. We had a point in our lives where we didn't think that we possessed that, but we made that decision. I took the chance to end that toxicity and just leave, because I knew the day my daughter saw that, she would be affected for the rest of her life. I continue to learn lessons as I'm older with her. She's a teenager now, and I know now better than I did then. So let's take away from tonight that no matter what it is that we go through, know that you are always strong enough to get past it. And remember, those little people who are behind you and big people are watching. I saw a quote today that said, leaving is a process, not an event. People sometimes wonder, you know, if I leave today, it's all going to be over with. No, it is a process, but we are here to support you through that process. And that's something that I want you to know as well. Oftentimes people think, I leave, but then I'm going to be alone. You're never going to be alone. That is what we are here for, because it is not an event that happens, ends, and never comes back. You know, their situations sometimes, they always say, think of it this way. when someone passes away in our family or in our lives, we have all the support when the person dies. People come to visit, they bring food, they bring us things so that we can feel good and we can feel supported during that time. But what is the hardest part when you lose someone you love? After the funeral. Because once the situation, the event is over, people stop calling a little less. People stop checking in on you a little less. People stop asking you, are you okay? So it's a process. When you leave, nothing just disappears immediately or instantly. Know that you have someone out here who is going to support you through that process. You're going to always have someone who's going to look out for you. You're going to always have someone who's going to say, it's hard, but I got you. Find someone in your life who loves you and can help you. And just know the decisions that you make now are forever going to carry on to your children. So make the best decisions you can for them. I thank Adriana for being here, for sharing her time with us. It was awesome. Next week, we will have another great topic. We always try to bring you the best so that you feel supported and that you can learn a little something from us. A few announcements for all of you. This Friday from 6 to 8 p.m., our partners at Concilio are having a Coquito contest. What I'm going to do tonight is raffle off 2 tickets to this event from 6 to 8 p.m. There is a Coquito tasting event. There are prizes. People are going to win prizes for the best Coquito. You can come, you can taste and cast your vote for the best Coquito recipe. So whoever is watching, I want to start a raffle tonight. So when I get off of here, I am going to pose a question and I want to see who are the first 2 people who answer. So you got to be quick. As soon as I post the question, you have to put the answer because my first 2 people who answer will win the contest for the 2 tickets to go to this event. They are still also looking for people. If you are out there and you feel like your Coquito is the best and it is bomb, they are still looking. So contact Concilio at their website, concilio.net. There's a $500 cash prize for the best Coquito. And listen, it's the holidays, so I know you guys are making Coquito because next week is Thanksgiving. That's how Grandma used to say it. Thanksgiving is next week. So I know that you guys are already making Coquito because it's that time of the year. So if you want to enter the contest, $500 for the best Coquito. When we get off of here, I'm going to ask a question. The first 2 people who answer are going to receive 2 tickets that are at a $30 value to go to the event this Friday. Thank you guys for being here. As always, a lot of love and muchísimos besos y abrazos for the constant support. Let's bring Adriana back to the stage. Thank you so much for being here. I had a great time. I hope you did too. Y que, let it happen again.
Yes, definitely. Hey, right there. Just give me a call. I'll be there. Yeah, thank you so much. This is, I mean, it's you can't put a dollar on this. Just giving out that information and getting these people to understand that there is a way and there are people out there to help. And this topic with the children, a lot of people forget about the kids, and we have to figure it out. We have to continue. We have to continue to shine that light on what is happening out there. And so thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for being that proponent and being that, that safety net for so many people out there. And I'm here for you whenever you have a topic and you want to go ahead and say, hey, Adriana, just had a cancellation, can you make it? Yeah. I'm here.
Absolutely. For everyone watching, we put in the comment section the link to her book. Go out and purchase that book today. It is in the comment section. Remember, when we get off, I'm going to pose a question. The first 2 people to answer will get tickets to the Coquito event on Friday. Adriana, when we get off, quédate ahí. Don't go anywhere. Stay there.
I have a great Coquito recipe. Oh,
$500 prize.
Oh man, I can't. I'm going to be in Baltimore.
La próxima.
Yeah, I'm super competitive. So I'm like,
well, there you go. Thank you everybody for watching. See you all next week. Happy
Bye-bye.
Tuesday.